When my son chose her over me, I didn't cry. I thought I would. I thought my heart would break into 1,000 little pieces and scatter across this old living room floor. But instead, I just sat there, quiet, still, like the world had pressed pause. He was standing near the doorway, his hand still resting on the knob, like he wasn't sure if he should stay or go. His wife stood behind him, her arms folded tight, her face turned slightly away. I remember the light that afternoon. It fell across his face in a way that made him look so much older than I remembered. It was the same light that used to shine on him when he was a little boy, running through this house barefoot, asking me to tie his shoes, or calling me from the porch to come see something he found in the yard. But that day that same light felt different. Colder. He said, "Mom, please just let it go. You're making things harder." His voice didn't carry anger, just exhaustion. And I knew right then I had lost something I would never fully get back. I wanted to tell him that I wasn't trying to make things harder, that all I ever wanted was for him to be happy, to feel safe, to be loved the way a mother dreams her son will be loved one day. But words felt heavy, and silence was easier. So I smiled just a little to make it seem like I was okay. Because mothers do that. We pretend. We hide our breaking places behind small smiles and quiet nods. He looked at me one more time before he left. His eyes said things his mouth couldn't. Maybe regret. Maybe guilt. Maybe nothing at all. The door closed gently. Not a slam. Just a soft click. And I sat there staring at that door, feeling like a chapter of my life had quietly ended. That's how it happened. Not with shouting. Not with hate. Just a slow, quiet goodbye hidden inside an ordinary afternoon. I didn't know it then, but that moment would change me. It would teach me what love really means, not the kind you hold on to, but the kind you learn to let go of. You know, when you become a mother, nobody really tells you that your heart will stop belonging to you. The day my son was born, I looked into his little eyes and thought, so this is what forever feels like. I was 24 then, young, full of dreams and terrified all at once. His father, Marcus, stood right there beside me, holding my hand so tight I thought he might break it. We were just two kids trying to raise one. But when our son cried, we learned together. When he laughed, the whole house felt like sunlight. Visual cue. Old home video sound, laughter, a child running in the backyard, the click of a camera. He was a curious child, always asking questions, always climbing, touching, exploring. And no matter how tired I was from work or bills or life, I always found energy for him. Because when you're a mother, love becomes your strength, even when your body's too tired to stand. Marcus used to say, "That boy got your stubbornness." And I'd laugh, saying, "Then we're both in trouble." But deep down I loved that about him. That stubborn fire. That drive to do things his own way. When he was 6, he started helping me in the kitchen, standing on a chair just to reach the counter, stirring pancake batter while flour dusted his cheeks. He used to say, "Mom, when I grow up, I'll cook for you every day." And I'd smile and say, "I'll hold you to that." But little boys don't stay little forever, do they? High school came faster than I was ready for. Suddenly, he was taller than me, his voice deeper, his room messier. He started spending more time outside, games, friends, late-night talks on the porch. Sometimes I'd peek out the window, watching him laugh under the streetlight, thinking, he's becoming his own man. And that's what I wanted. Truly. But the more he grew, the quieter the house became. Marcus used to tease me, "You miss having him under your wing." And I'd shrug. "I just miss hearing his voice around here." But deep down, I was already learning what letting go felt like. When he left for college, I cried in the kitchen. Not loud, just a soft cry. The kind that sneaks up on you when the house gets too still. His room still smelled like him, that mix of cologne, paper, and laundry detergent. I folded his favorite hoodie one more time before putting it away, telling myself, this is what good mothers do. They let their children fly. And he did fly. He graduated with honors, found a job he loved, and started building a life that made me proud. He called often. Hey Mom, just checking in. Or Mom, you'd love this new place I found. Those calls were my favorite part of the week. He even came home one Thanksgiving with someone new. Her name was Alana. She was polite, beautiful, and a little quiet. The kind of woman who observed before she spoke. I noticed how his eyes lit up when she entered the room, and my heart, oh my heart, felt that familiar ache of change. They laughed together at the table, shared private glances, little inside jokes. I smiled, I really did. But a part of me knew. Something sacred was shifting. Not in a bad way, just naturally. He was growing into a world that didn't revolve around me anymore. When they got married, I stood there watching him say his vows, trying not to cry. He looked so sure, so happy. And as he said, I do, I whispered to myself, so do I let him go. Alana was lovely that day, graceful, poised. She came to me afterward and said, thank you for raising such a good man. I smiled and told her, take good care of him. And I meant it. But still, when I came home that night to my quiet house, I sat at the edge of my bed and stared at the empty hallway. I told myself over and over, this is joy, not loss. This is love, not loneliness. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a silence settled. The kind that lingers, gentle but heavy. The first few months after the wedding, we talked often. He called to tell me about their apartment, his work, her cooking. Mom, she makes the best mac and cheese, you gotta try it. I laughed, teased him that he finally found someone who could cook better than me. But slowly the calls became shorter, less frequent. Texts replaced our long conversations. Holidays started to feel rushed. Quick visits, polite smiles, half hugs at the door. I told myself it's just life. He's busy. But deep down I missed him. Not just his presence, but the way he used to need me. I began to realize that motherhood doesn't end when your children grow up. It just becomes quieter. You love from a distance. You care through silence. You pray more than you speak. Looking back now, I think that's where the distance began. Not in anger or disagreement, but in life simply moving forward. He was building his future. And I was learning how to exist in mine, without being the center of his world anymore. I didn't know then that one day that distance would turn into a wall. And that wall would be built, not with anger but with love misunderstood. It started small. Most stories like this do. A missed call here, a forgotten visit there. Nothing you'd think too much about, just life, right? But sometimes it's not the big arguments that break hearts. It's the silence that settles between them. One Saturday, I decided to surprise them. I'd baked my son's favorite sweet potato pie just the way he liked it, with a touch of cinnamon and nutmeg. It had been months since I'd seen them. I wanted to drop by, say hello, maybe spend an afternoon catching up. I called first, of course. He answered on speaker. I could hear Alana's voice in the background, warm, polite. Hey, Mom, he said, cheerful but rushed. We were actually about to head out for brunch with friends. Maybe later this week. I smiled into the phone, pretending it didn't sting. Oh, sure, baby. I just thought I'd stop by with some pie. He hesitated a second, I caught it. Then Alana's voice, soft but firm. Tell her to leave it at the door, we can grab it later. I froze for just a moment. Not out of anger, just surprise. He repeated it kindly. Yeah, Mom. Maybe you can just leave it by the door. We'll pick it up on our way back. And I said what mothers say when they're trying to be strong. Of course, sweetheart. No problem. I hung up, stood there for a while, the warm pie in my hands. The smell filled the whole kitchen, sweet, comforting but lonely. Soft piano begins. Camera shows her setting the pie on the counter, then covering it with foil. I told myself not to overthink it. They were newly married, finding their rhythm. Every couple needs their space. Still, that night, when I opened the fridge and saw the empty spot where that pie used to cool, I felt something hollow in me. They invited me for dinner one evening. My heart lifted. Finally, time together. I dressed up a bit, brought a small gift, a framed photo of him as a child, sitting on Marcus's shoulders, both of them smiling at the camera. When I arrived, Alana greeted me politely but with that careful tone people use.
If you've made it this far, you're one of the few people who truly listens deeply. I'd love to know which idea so far has made you stop and think the most. Leave a thought below, and I'll feature one in the next episode.
When they're managing space. Hi, Mrs. Taylor. So glad you could make it. Mrs. Taylor. She used to call me Mom back when they were dating. I smiled anyway. Oh, please call me Denise, I said, setting the frame down on the counter. She gave a small nod, already turning back to stir something on the stove. My son came in a few minutes later, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted something to drink. For a little while things felt good. We talked about his work, the house, the new furniture they picked out. But then small things started to shift. When I asked if he'd been by the old neighborhood lately, she cut in. He's too busy for that now. We barely have time for ourselves. It was said lightly, but I caught the edge in her tone. I didn't reply. Later, as we sat down for dinner, I reached to serve myself a bit of salad and accidentally used the wrong serving spoon. Alana gently corrected me. Oh, we used that one for the dressing, not the salad. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It was nothing at all. Yet I felt like I'd stepped somewhere I wasn't supposed to. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table and thought, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's just me adjusting. Maybe I'm expecting too much from a new marriage. But still, every little change felt like another door quietly closing. One night I called him just to talk. It had been over a week since we last spoke. He answered sounding tired. Hey Mom, can I call you back later? We're watching something. I said, sure baby, just wanted to hear your voice. But he never called back. And I didn't remind him. Because mothers, we keep count of those moments silently. We don't guilt our children, we just miss them in quiet ways. Then came the family barbecue. Every summer I'd host it. All the cousins, aunties, uncles, laughter filling the backyard. It had been our tradition since he was a child. This time Alana offered to host instead. I agreed, trying to be supportive. After all, it was good, she wanted to be involved. But when I arrived, everything felt different. The same people, the same laughter, but the rhythm had changed. She moved through the crowd with ease, directing things, serving food, telling stories. My son stood beside her, beaming with pride. He looked happy, and that should have been enough. But when I reached to help in the kitchen, she said softly, "Oh, don't worry, we've got it." I stood there with an empty plate in my hands, unsure where to put myself. Later, one of my nieces joked, "Looks like you've been replaced, Aunt Denise." We laughed, but the words stuck in my chest. That night, when I got home, I looked at the old family photo on the mantel, the one where Marcus had his arm around me, and our boy sat between us. I whispered, "We raised him right, didn't we?" And I swear if walls could speak, they'd tell me yes, but also it's time to let him go again. Weeks passed. Calls turned into quick texts. Visits turned into holidays. And then one day, the misunderstanding came that it was over something so small. I still can't believe it changed so much. "Hey sweetheart, I made extra gumbo today. Thought I'd drop some by your place." He hesitated. "Oh Mom, that's sweet, but Alana doesn't really eat seafood. Maybe another time." I laughed gently. "I'll make her something else then. I can cook both." He sighed softly, that tone children use when they're trying to avoid hurting you. "Mom, she feels like you're doing too much sometimes. Like you don't give her space to take care of me herself." "Oh," I said quietly. I didn't realize bringing food was too much. He rushed to fix it. That's not what I meant. You know how she is. She just likes doing things her own way. I swallowed the ache in my throat. Of course, baby. I understand. But I didn't. Not really. That night I sat on the porch watching the sunset behind the trees. The wind felt cooler than usual. I whispered to myself, she's not wrong. He's her husband now. Still, it hurt that after all those years of care I'd somehow become too much. Marcus used to say, "You love hard, Denise." Sometimes people don't know what to do with that. Maybe he was right. A few weeks later I was invited again, this time for his birthday. I wrapped his favorite cologne, wrote a card that simply said, "Proud of the man you've become." At the dinner table everyone laughed, shared stories. I mostly listened. At one point a relative joked about how I used to iron his shirts even in college. Before I could respond, Alana laughed. "Oh, he doesn't need that kind of pampering anymore." The table chuckled. He smiled too. Not cruelly, just unaware of how much those words stung. I smiled back, hiding it. Because that's what mothers do, we hide our hurt in grace. That was the night I realized something had shifted for good. Not broken, just changed shape. My son had chosen his path, his partner, his home. And while I'd always be part of his life, I wasn't at the center anymore. It's funny, you raise your child to be strong, independent, capable. And then when they are, you have to learn how to live without being needed. But I didn't know that a bigger storm was still coming. Something that would test the little piece I had left. Something that would make him, my own son, stand across from me defending her, and leaving me to face a silence I never saw coming. I can tell you the exact day it happened. It was a Sunday in early spring. The kind of day where the air smells like wet grass and fresh beginnings. Except that morning something heavy sat in my chest. Maybe mothers just know. Maybe some part of us feels the shift before it even happens. I woke up early, made a pot of coffee, and looked out the window. The rain had left the yard shiny and green. And for some reason, I thought about the first time I held my son. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine. His eyes searching for a world that had just begun for him. He was my whole world back then. And I was his. That morning, I got a message from him. "Hey Mom, can we come by later? We need to talk." Just 6 words. But they felt final. I don't know why, but I sat there staring at that message for a long time. I told myself not to worry, not to assume. Still, my heart whispered something's coming. I opened the door before they could knock. There they were, standing side by side, hands intertwined. My son smiled, polite, almost formal. Alana gave me a small nod. "Come in," I said softly. They sat on the couch while I poured them coffee. For a moment it felt normal again, like any family visit. But then the silence between us grew louder than words. Finally I asked, "What's going on?" He looked at her first, then at me. "Mom," he began carefully, "we've been talking. And there's something we need to clear up." I felt my stomach tighten. "Clear up?" I repeated. "About what?" Alana took a small breath. "About the way things have been lately. I feel like there's tension. And it's been affecting him. Affecting us." Her voice was calm, but there was a firmness under it. I nodded slowly, trying to stay open. "I'm sorry if I've made you uncomfortable, sweetheart. That was never my intention." She nodded once, then glanced at him again. He reached for her hand, and that's when I knew this wasn't just a small talk. He said, "Mom, I love you. You know that. But I need you to understand that my wife comes first now." For a second, everything around me blurred. The clock ticked. The rain fell. But my world went still. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. "I do understand," I said softly. "I always have. But what did I do that made you feel otherwise?" He looked down, unsure how to answer. It was Alana who spoke next. "You call too often. You show up without asking sometimes. You make him feel guilty when he can't come by." I blinked, surprised. "I didn't realize a phone call could be a problem," I said, half smiling to ease the sting. "I only call because I miss him. That's all." Her eyes softened for a moment, but her tone stayed steady. "I know. But he's building a life now, Denise. We just need space." My son nodded slowly. "It's not that we don't love you. We just need boundaries. Boundaries. It's such a clean word for something that feels so sharp. I looked at them both and said, I understand. I really do. I just wish you told me sooner, instead of letting me feel like I was doing something wrong for loving you. He looked torn, eyes darting between me and her. Mom, please don't take it that way. You're not doing anything wrong. We just need a little space, that's all. But his tone, careful, guarded, made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. I nodded, because what else could I do? Mothers don't fight for their pride. We fight for our children's peace, even when it costs us ours. Still, something in me broke quietly that day. After a long pause, I said, all right, I'll give you the space you need. I forced a small smile. I guess every bird has to leave the nest sometime. He smiled back, relieved, like I just lifted a weight off him. And in that moment I realized maybe I had. I washed their coffee cups after they left. The water was warm, almost too hot, but I didn't move my hands. I just stood there letting it run, watching the soap bubbles fade down the drain. It's strange how empty a house can feel after one short conversation. I thought about calling Marcus like I used to whenever something upset me, but he wasn't here anymore. And the silence after that thought hurt more.
If you've made it this far, you're one of the few people who truly listens deeply. I'd love to know which idea so far has made you stop and think the most. Leave a thought below, and I'll feature one in the next episode.
Than the conversation itself. So I sat at the table alone with my hands still damp, and whispered to no one. I guess this is what letting go feels like. I tried to move forward. I really did. When my sister-in-law invited me to a small family dinner, I told myself it would be fine. We were family after all. But when I arrived, I could feel the unease in the air. Whispers stopped when I walked in. Smiles were polite but hesitant. I saw my son across the room. He looked happy, relaxed, laughing with Alana's friends. When our eyes met, he smiled faintly, then looked away too quickly. It wasn't cruelty. It was avoidance. And that hurt more. My sister-in-law leaned close and whispered, I think she told folks you've been overstepping. I blinked. Overstepping? How? She shrugged softly, saying you make her uncomfortable sometimes. That you don't respect their privacy. I froze. That word again, privacy. I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to believe it was just gossip, but deep down, I knew where it came from. Later that evening, when I tried to say goodbye to my son, Alana came up beside him. He hesitated before hugging me, and I could feel her eyes on us, measuring, watching. That was the moment I realized he wasn't free anymore. Not to love me the same way. Not to stand in the middle without choosing sides. And when the time came, he chose. I called him again. I shouldn't have, but I did. I just wanted to hear his voice. Hey baby, I said softly. Haven't heard from you in a while. You okay? There was a pause, a long one. Then his voice low and careful. Mom, I told you we'd call. You can't keep doing this. Doing what? I asked quietly. Calling every other night. It's too much. Alana feels like you don't trust her. I felt my heart pound, the ache rising in my chest. Trust her? Baby, this isn't about trust. I just miss you. That's all. He sighed, that deep, tired sigh I'd known since he was a boy. Mom, please stop making me choose. I didn't know you had to, I whispered. But he'd already hung up. That's the night I finally cried. Not loud. Not wild. Just quiet tears that slipped down without sound. Because I understood, in his mind I was making him choose. And in trying to hold on, I'd pushed him farther away. So I made a promise that night, to stop calling, to stop showing up, to let them have their space. It was the hardest promise I ever kept. Weeks turned into months. The house grew quieter. But somehow so did my heart. And for the first time in my life, I had to learn how to be a mother from a distance. The days after that night were quiet. Too quiet. My house felt like a stranger's place. The clock ticked louder, the floors creaked heavier, and even the sunlight felt too bright for what my heart carried. For a long time, I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd go from room to room, picking up small things, the framed photo of Marcus at his high school graduation, His old basketball, the little clay heart he made for me in second grade. I held each one like it was a lifeline to who we used to be. And yet I knew holding on wasn't helping. I wasn't angry anymore. Just empty. That weekend he called. His voice was soft, cautious, like he wasn't sure which version of me would pick up. The one who used to bake him cookies, or the one who'd just been hurt beyond words. He said, "Mama, I didn't mean for things to go that way." I closed my eyes, breathing in the silence between us. "I know, baby," I said. "But they did." There was a pause. Then he whispered, "I just wanted her to feel accepted, to feel like family." And right there I realized something that hurt and healed at the same time. He wasn't choosing her instead of me. He was choosing for her, the way I'd once chosen for him. When he was little, I'd fight anyone who made him feel small, unseen, unwanted. And now he was doing that for his wife. That was love. Maybe a different kind of love than mine, but love nonetheless. So I told him, "Marcus, I raised you to protect the people you love. You're doing that. I can't be mad at you for it." He sighed, and I could hear the relief in it. The kind of breath someone takes when they've been holding their guilt too long. "Thank you, Mama," he said. We didn't say much more after that. But somehow it felt enough. The next Sunday I went to church. It had been months since I'd gone. I sat near the back listening to the choir. And for the first time in a long while I didn't feel alone. The pastor talked about forgiveness, how it's not about pretending things never happened, but about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. I closed my eyes and let that sink in. Forgiveness wasn't something I gave Marcus that day. It was something I gave myself. Later that evening, I opened the box of things I'd kept over the years. His first drawing, his college acceptance letter, the photo from his wedding. I laid them out on the table one by one and smiled. Each memory was a piece of love. And love doesn't vanish. Changes form, that's all. A few weeks later, he invited me over. "Mom," he said on the phone, "we're having a small dinner. We'd love for you to come." I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure I was ready to face her again. But then I remembered something my own mother used to say. Peace doesn't visit the closed door. You gotta open it yourself. So I said yes. That night I baked my old cornbread, the one Marcus always loved, and brought it over. When I stepped into their home, the air smelled like rosemary and new beginnings. She greeted me at the door. Nervous smile. Soft voice. "Hi, Mrs. Turner. I'm glad you came." And I said, "It's just Clara, dear. We're family now." Her eyes softened. That moment, it didn't erase the pain, but it planted a seed. A seed of something new. Dinner was quiet at first. But then Marcus started telling one of his childhood stories. About how he once tried to run away from home with a backpack full of cookies and no plan at all. We all laughed. Even she did. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real was good enough for me. Later that night, after they dropped me back home, I sat on my porch and looked up at the stars. I thought about how love grows, how it shifts and stretches until it fits everyone who needs it. It doesn't disappear. It just changes its address sometimes. That night I felt at peace. Maybe I had lost something, the closeness, the daily calls, the way he once looked at me for every answer. But I had gained something too, the knowing that he was loved, that he was building his own home, his own story. And that's all a mother ever really wants, isn't it? I still talk to him every week. Sometimes we laugh, sometimes we just sit in silence on the phone. But I've learned that silence isn't always empty. Sometimes it's peace. I've learned that motherhood doesn't end. It simply evolves. And loving someone doesn't mean holding on. Sometimes it means letting them go and trusting that they'll carry your love wherever they go. When my son chose her, I thought I'd lost everything. But now I see. I just made space for something new. Love didn't leave. It grew just in another home under another roof but from the same roots. And that to me is enough. The weeks turned into months and life found its rhythm again. Slower, softer, simpler. I started spending my mornings on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint the sky in gold. That became my little ritual, my time to breathe, to think, to just be. I stopped waiting for the phone to ring, because I knew it eventually would. And when it did, it wasn't out of guilt or obligation anymore. It was love calling home in its own time. Marcus and his wife started visiting more often. Sometimes they'd bring dinner, sometimes they'd just sit with me and talk about nothing at all. The weather, the new movie he liked, the garden he was trying to grow in their backyard. And little by little, that wall between us started to fade. Not all at once, but quietly, like morning mist lifting off the fields. One afternoon he came by alone. He sat at the kitchen table, the same one where he'd once done his homework, where we'd argued, laughed, cried. He looked around the room and smiled. "Everything looks the same, Mama." I smiled back. "That's 'cause some things shouldn't change, baby." He hesitated for a second before saying, "I want you to know, she really does love you. She just didn't know how to show it. And I didn't know how to balance everything. I'm sorry." I reached across the table, took his hand and said, "You don't owe me an apology. You're doing exactly what I prayed you'd do. Love your family fiercely. That's all I ever wanted." He looked down, tears in his eyes, and for a moment, he was my little boy again. The one who used to cling to me when thunder scared him. That's the thing about motherhood. You raise your children to be strong, to stand on their own. And then, when they finally do, it breaks your heart a little. But that's how love works. It stretches. It teaches you to hold on without holding back. I started noticing small changes in myself. I began joining the community choir again. I made new friends at church. I even started volunteering at the library, reading stories to kids. And you know what? Felt good finding me again. Not just the mother or the wife or the caretaker, but Clara. For years, my world revolved around my son. Now, I was learning to build a world that included him but didn't depend on him. Sometimes, when the house gets quiet, I still miss those old days, the laughter, the chaos, the warmth of a home full of life. But I've learned not to dwell there too long. The past isn't a place to live. It's a place to visit, to learn, to remember with love. One Sunday, Marcus brought her over again. She'd made a lemon pie, the same kind I used to make when he was little. When she placed it on the table, I smiled. "That smells familiar," I said. She blushed and said, "Marcus told me it was your favorite. I wanted to try making it for you." We shared it together, the three of us, laughing over how she'd accidentally used too much sugar. And in that moment I felt it again, family. Not the same as before, but real. Later that night, after they left, I stood at the doorway watching their car drive away. And something inside me whispered, this is what letting go looks like. It isn't loss. It's love evolved. You see, when my son chose her, I thought it was the end of something. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of a new chapter. One where I wasn't just his mother, but also a woman learning to love differently. Love that doesn't demand space but gives it. Love that doesn't compete but completes. I lost a certain closeness that day, but I found peace. And peace, my dear, is worth everything. Now, when I think about it all, the hurt, the healing, the silence, the laughter, I realize something important. We don't lose love when people grow up or move on or change. We simply learn to love them in a new way. And maybe that's what growing up really means. Not just for them, but for us too. So if you're listening to this and you're a mother or a father or anyone who's ever felt left behind, remember this. Love doesn't end when people walk away. It lingers, in memories, in prayers, in the small moments they carry from you into their world. And one day when the hurt softens and your heart quiets, you'll see. They never really left. They just kept growing. And now so can you. When my son chose her, I thought I'd lost much. But the truth is, I learned more than I ever imagined. Because love, real love, always finds a way to stay. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to breathe with me. Sometimes sharing a story helps someone else heal too. So please, give this video a like, leave a comment to tell me where you're listening from. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because somewhere out there, another heart is waiting to feel understood.
If you've listened this far, thank you for being here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from, First I'd love to know.